Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Christensen, this is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, and this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. We are on the back half of October. Please donate via the link in the description below this video. And tonight we're going to be talking about Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool, which came out earlier this year, 2023. And here to chat with me about it is my awesome panel consisting of Dodd Alley, Mackenzie Parker, and Jess Ader. And again, we're talking about Infinity Pool 2023. Did any of you get to see this in the theater? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
No.
I was actually, I was pretty happy to see it in the theater because if I recall, it was January, and January has a lot of garbage. And so I was like, hey, a good movie in January.
I saw it online.
Yeah, I actually watched it about a month ago, but when it was out, I had the intention of seeing it and just didn't get around to it. But I thought the same thing. It's January. There's nothing to see. And then I was like, oh, a Cronenberg Sons movie. Wow.
And I've liked Brandon's other films. I really enjoyed Antiviral. I thought Possessor was really good. We talked about that last year on the show. And I think this is the one, where he can shake off any accusations of him riding his dad's coattails. He is a filmmaker in his own right, and he has his own ideas. I read this somewhere that, where David Cronenberg is interested in the corruption of the body, Brandon Cronenberg is interested in the corruption of the soul. And I'm like, I like that. If you can put your stamp on something, why not? Because Infinity Pool is a dark little nasty piece of cinema, and it does feel very much like you come out of it going, ooh, I don't feel so hot about humanity.
I read that same. I actually was just going through it right before this, and I'd read that same thing, and I think that's fairly true. I would say the closest of David Cronenberg ones might be Crash. As far as like the like lengths that people go for their needs or whatever, where they've just lost all moral obligation.
So Dodd, you having seen this before, what drew you to want to talk about it tonight for the panel?
I mean, kind of what Jess was saying, there was something about it that kind of it reminded me of Crash when I was watching it. It starts out where there's just simple enough. There's, a man on vacation, trying to find inspiration. One thing leads to another. And then he sort of gets sucked into this world of depravity, and it just goes deeper and deeper. And you're right. When the film was over, I certainly was kind of thinking, man, that was a world that I don't want to go to in real life. I feel kind of like taking a shower, but at the same time, I mean, it really intrigued me, and I thought about it for days afterwards. So, it's one of those movies, I think, where I thought about it so much, I'd like the chance to watch it a second time, and I like a chance to discuss it and kind of go through some of those extra layers that I noticed. And I did notice some extra things this time around.
And Mac, you actually talked on the Crimes of the Future panel.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear, did you see any cross-pollination going on between the two latest Cronenberg projects?
Let's see. I don't know. Other than I feel like there's similarities in the way they were shot. Like the cinematography feels similar. Their eyes are very similar, Brandon and David Cronenberg. I also have to thank you for pulling me into this conversation as well, because I wasn't a part of this initially. And when I saw the lists and when you posted them of who was doing what movies, I was a little bummed that I wasn't doing this one, because this is my favorite movie of this year so far.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I saw this movie. I'm pretty sure I blind bought it because I love Possessor so much. And, to me, maybe it's because they're Canadian and it feels like a sweet little cottage industry they have of just, horrific things going on in their movies. But I don't feel the nepotism as much with Brandon and David Cronenberg. It feels like, Antiviral is great. I love Possessor, and Infinity Pool. Just it's such a sure hand that he has that I just don't. Yeah. And even though there's a lot of cross pollination between like themes in their movies, it still feels so unique. Like it feels like a torch is being passed more than there's nepotism happening.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I am going to throw up the spoilers banner really quick, just to kind of, because what happens is we have our couple, James and M, and they are clearly they're clearly at odds in their marriage, and they fall in at this resort in the fictional country town, whatever it is, of Litolqua, but they fall in with Gabby and Albin, and they decide that even though the resort explicitly, does not allow them to leave the grounds, they, rent a car and they go for a drive and they spend a day out in the world. And then on the way back, James happens to hit somebody on the road, and he finds out that Litolqua has a pretty serious no tolerance policy against, accidental manslaughter. But they also have come up with a pretty nifty get out of jail free card. And that is, they will create a double for you, and that double can die in your place, which I love the fact that, like, we don't even go into the technology of that. We just go, it's like, it's such a Ray Bradbury thing. We're just like, this is what we can do here. Do you want to do it or not? And when James is faced with that, he's like, yes, I'll choose live. I would rather live than be killed. But then he actually has to watch him. So that's the other part of the deal, is he has to watch his double be killed by the firstborn of the victim. Like, I love that, like, somebody sat down in Litolqua government and, like, wrote out the bylaws of how this is going to go. Oh, and the other thing is that we have your double will also have your memories. So it is literally a double of you. And then, of course, there's that question of who's real, who's the double. And I'm sure you all had that same feeling of, like, who actually got executed, and does it matter?
It made me think of replicants in Blade Runner for sure, and just also just like a much more terrifying version of Groundhog Day. Like, it's almost the evil side of Buddhism or something.
Evil side of Buddhism, that's good.
Yeah. Like, no lesson is learned if you don't consider. Obviously, they touch upon that, but they stop having any kind of empathy for the previous versions of themselves. And I thought that was really conceptually the most interesting thing about this whole movie. And like, the whole movie, I had that in every incarnation of them. You're like, oh, how many times does this happen now? We've only seen some of them,
right?
At this point,
at least three, like, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they actually show
him. Just
the
for James.
ashes.
Yeah, and then we see the whole group when they get arrested together later on,
right?
And like that whole thing.
But you get the sense, because James falls in with this group that have all committed crimes and have had their doubles executed. But you get the sense that they're basically going on these holidays. They come back each year to do awful things and not have to pay the ultimate price. They pay a financial price. And it is that kind of elite, the rich who are able to just buy themselves out of situation after situation. And it's that kind of privilege, that they're able to do it. And of course, the Litolquans are, yeah, sure, as many times as you want to come and give us your money. Fantastic. Tourism is great.
The first time I saw it, I think I saw it from the perspective of the main character. It was actually him the whole time during the whole movie, and I saw it through that set of eyes. And so I saw everyone as every other person as a duplicate. But then the second time I saw it, it was like watching a different movie for me, because then I saw it from the perspective of, I think it's the duplicate every time, or it's the duplicate every time. He's losing a piece of himself every time the replicant gets created. So I don't know. It's kind of like watching two different movies for me.
And I had that question of, like, why would the Litolquans sub out why would they send the replicant out into the world and kill the original, like what would be the upside to that? So that's why, like you, I was watching it as, yes, he was the original, and watching versions of himself be killed in his place. But you just get further and further from your responsibility in this world, you know?
Which
yeah,
is-
even if they're short lived, they still feel all that pain, and it is a version of you. So it's, yeah, I'm just a dark person or something, but I definitely thought, oh, this definitely could be the other, the copied version for sure. I mean, obviously it's meant to be a movie like that where it's up to you to decide that. That's why it's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, to what you had said about wanting to take a shower, I just felt like very dirty after watching this film because of that fact. Like, ooh, they're like completely morally bankrupt.
Well, Mia Goth is just terrifying in this movie, and she's the one that I'm just like, oh wow, I hate this character. She reminded me very much of Susan George in Straw Dogs, in that kind of, there's this kind of this pushy obnoxiousness and yet really sexy, and you're like, oh man, I don't, I can see why he's attracted to her and why he doesn't, say anything when she's making the moves on him. But there's also just something that's so kind of grating and pushy and dominating about her that you're like, I have stepped in further than I intended to.
She pulled him into this world and didn't have to. She just didn't give a shit.
I'm glad we finally got to Mia Goth, because she is her. I mean, I've loved everything I've seen her in. So up to this point, Suspiria and X and Pearl especially is really brilliant. But this is the movie where I was really looking at her thinking, we're going to see her for a long time. Like she's going to be around like a Kate Winslet. We'll see her like go through phases in her career for the next, few decades. I think she's incredible. And this is my favorite performance of hers. I think it has something to do with maybe because she's not doing an accent. So there's more of like there's something a little bit more open and free about her performance maybe than even Pearl to me. I love this performance so much.
It really does have a lot of layers to it. I mean, she just starts out so charming and subtle, and then the next thing you know, she's just eating up the scenery. But it's not to the point of being annoying. I mean, she slowly segues into this character to the point where when she gets there, you're like, oh yeah, I'm frightened of her. So.
Yeah, when she's firing that gun wildly and all that stuff, that is insane. It's like Nicholson-esque how crazy she gets in this movie.
For sure. And we have some great visuals, like those Eki masks that they wear as part of the ceremonial thing at the beginning, but then also that becomes like their disguises when they break into people's houses. Like these don't feel like just traditional masks. They feel like these are like weird, like you kind of wonder what the history is behind these masks. Why do they look the way they look, and what do each of them mean?
That felt like those masks were made by David and Brandon Cronenberg, just father-son project.
On the subject of the masks, it's something I picked up on with the masks and just other scenes, almost kind of like these blink and you miss it scenes. I noticed this time there's a lot of a theme here of cultural appropriation. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the theme of them taking the masks, but also, did anybody catch this? It's like, to me, it was blink and you miss it. They cut through the lobby, and there were these people in the lobby dressed up like Jewish stereotypes, like with these long noses and these Orthodox Jewish costumes on, and there was also a scene where the white tourists were learning how to Bollywood dance in the scene where they were cutting across. I noticed a big reoccurring theme of that, and that the masks made me think of that. It's just something I really picked up on during this viewing.
One of the things that wasn't blink did you miss it was that orgy scene where it's kind of like, recalling the Stargate of 2001, A Space Odyssey, where it just keeps going and going and going. And I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be thinking anymore, other than just like, will this ever end, or are we just going to be trapped here in this weird Stargate orgy for the rest of our lives?
I loved how it was shot, though. It reminded me of the scene in Possession, that kind of double exposure and super colorful and hallucinatory. The way that scene in Possession or Possessor was when she was like losing her mind, very similar in the way it was kind of edited and the way it looked. I love all that stuff. It's great. Wonder what it was like filming it, though.
The cinematography is just great. Like, you have those shots where the whole thing just kind of turns upside down. And, if you think about that metaphorically, I'm just occurring to me now, but like, we are in a world that has turned upside down. And it's like, there are no consequences to your actions anymore. Like, you can literally do anything. And in some respects, it made me think of Westworld, where it's like, you go here to live out your fantasies, and then you go back to the regular world, and nothing, like you are unchanged. You are unscarred. Like that bus ride back to the airport, I found just utterly chilling, where they start just talking about the mundane things that they're going to do when they get back home, after having just done all of the horrible things that we've seen them do.
And we see a side of Mia Goth that we hadn't seen throughout the entire movie, where she's just it's all very passive and very like, and it's like, who is this woman?
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of a Westworld for the
it's a good comparison.
Era. Yeah,
similar themes as well. I mean, just like you said, the you can kind of just pay the problem your problems away.
I was gonna say, it was definitely a clear moment when James realized, listening to all of them on the bus, that he was just not cut from the same cloth. And
literally, like his wife is the one who has the money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he is not of this kind at all. And I think that's part of his fantasy, was being able to hang out with the idle rich.
It's so cruel when she tells him that, like, oh, I didn't really read your book. It's so hard to even find it. It's so awful.
Yeah. What was her trademark? It was failing, or I forget what she described it.
Oh, like failing to do tasks, like making simple tasks look really difficult.
Yeah, that's right.
Because she's a commercial actress, and she needs to, she's like, I cannot live without this product because my life is so hard and I'm so inept at regular life.
Yeah, I had kind of forgotten about the aspect that the whole author thing. It's been a month since I watched the movie, but during it, I was thinking that in the beginning that it would go upon this journey of him using this all for inspiration. That's where I thought the movie was going. Almost like that Aronofsky movie Mother or something, where he keeps trying to find his diamond or whatever, and in the end it was sadder because he's like completely and utterly lost. And what got him there was someone lying about a book they didn't even care about, which just made it so devastating.
Well, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is that, like when he and his wife are planning to leave, after he's been released, and the double has been killed, and he doesn't have his passport, and so he has to stay. And then you find out later that he actually hid his passport so that he could stay, so that he could be part of this. And so he's not a victim, he is a willing participant in all of this. And these doubles that he's going through, I just feel like are just layers and layers of himself. Like, he's willing to shed more and more of his morality in order to stay in this group and be part. It's like he wants to be part of this rich clique that he does not belong to at all. He has no right to it.
Yeah, in fact, they were targeting him the whole time. He was just part of their game, and they were just playing with him the whole time.
That's where you get to step back and go, these are people who don't have any, for them, it is just a fantasy. It doesn't mean anything. They're going and playing with people's lives, and there are no consequences to it. You can just write a check and the problem goes away. And I think that's if a little overt social commentary, I think it's worthwhile social commentary.
I think that's where the title comes from too, is just this like the not only like multiple doubles and all that stuff and just going and going and going, but just the ongoing excess as well, that they can just, there's no end to this. There's no consequences. It's just what a depressing existence.
One thing that I did want to put out as a question to the panel is this notion of, the child stabbing the double to death. Because it's kind of pointless ultimately in terms of the concept. Like it doesn't solve anything at all. I'm curious to hear, like, what do we think of that rationale of allowing the firstborn to murder someone who is not the one who committed the crime? Or do you think that they are unaware? Do you think that they don't know? Because, I mean, if they look behind them, they'll see that he's sitting in the audience, so I don't know what kind of satisfaction you actually gain from murdering a double who doesn't exist, didn't exist until, 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. And what happens when he sees the son again? Because later on, like when he encounters that family again, the son seems fairly placid. I can't read him, like what he's feeling about Skarsgard in that moment.
I was wondering if it was more about the the theater of it all, and more like we have to figure out ways to make these spectators happy and make them want to come back if they're going to do this. Well, because
that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I think maybe it's at the expense of the poor people, honestly, when I was seeing that, because I mean, the first one you see the firstborn murdering the killer, but then the other one, it was like this mass throat slitting, and so it was almost kind of like a theater of blood type thing, or almost a spectacle.
Yeah, it felt like some kind of like Illuminati ceremony.
Yeah.
We must go through with this to represent all sides. But yeah, I guess I kind of forgot about that aspect. But the first time around, I thought he's like literally right behind that kid.
No, I do love that idea, Dodd. The idea that it's performance for the sake of the people who are writing the checks.
Part of the Westworld experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the Bill Wilcox or the Bill Hickok show.
Because it starts out
in the chest.
Well, because it starts out horrific to Alexander Skarsgård, and then by the like two replicants later, and suddenly they're all cheering to watch themselves die. It's crazy.
It was horrifying at first, and then he just kind of, the first time when the boy murders him, and then he kind of looks horrified, but then he kind of cracks that smile, like there's some satisfaction to it.
That's right.
But again, is that all a performance? It's like, we don't even know if that is the kid, like that's actually his father that was killed. We don't actually know if the father is a real, if that's not just a replicant of somebody else that's been trotted out there to be murdered.
I had that thought too. They just put in like this was all plotted out beforehand so they could just keep these people coming back because they
interesting. I hadn't thought of any of that at all.
It's all going so fast that you don't get enough time to process that, because you are like, it almost is like when you think about the Terminator, you start thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense.
But yeah, none of these people on this island need to be real people. They can all have been kind of created and brought here to serve this purpose. They are the androids of Westworld. I'm just now kind of having this thought. It's like, they don't have to be real people at all, and that's.
But what's perplexing is the character that Thomas Kretschmann plays, the government guy. He's amazing. He's in so many movies, and when he popped up in this, I was so happy because I'm like, of course he's playing some like low level government bureaucrat, because that's what he does. But his disposition towards all those people seems so irritated and just kind of like exhausted with tourism. And so that's like the one doubt that I would have, that maybe that this is all kind of planned, because he just seems very like, But
I mean, but basically it's like you're the guy tearing the tickets at the front of the theater, there is mundaneness to it. And he is kind of annoyed at having to deal with these rich assholes who come in and, Yeah, I'm actually really glad we had this conversation because I appreciate this film even on a deeper level now.
Me too, and it's already my favorite
yeah.
movie of the year.
It's on my list for sure for 2023.
Yeah,
So what
it's
I was-
great.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it felt like newer and fresher, and obviously I had not seen the other of his first two, so I was just like fresh on the new. I love David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
But I actually ended up watching Crimes of the Future as well first. But I know you guys already discussed that. But yeah, I think there's enough difference. I would say the difference is there's a lot more humanity in the characters. David Cronenberg's people feel more like the people in a like Ridley Scott film where they almost feel like they could all be replicants in every single film.
A little more
In a way.
aloof
That's
and
true,
removed.
Yeah, they all feel less human to me in a way that makes sense for Videodrome or whatever. But
Yeah.
in this, they all felt quite human, which is what made it more terrifying. Whereas David Cronenberg stuff almost seems like silly at times, like a dark humor to it or something. It's so bizarre that you must laugh.
Well, thank you all so much. This was a great conversation. It went places I wasn't expecting, so that was super fun. Again, this is Scare-A-Thon 2023, benefiting the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. The link to donate is below in the description. Please make a contribution. This is a cause that's very important to myself and my guests. Until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.